Good morning. Good morning. My name is Lex Heron, and I'm going to be your facilitator today. I welcome all of you to this sanctuary, and to those on Zoom, a welcome to you as well. If you haven't done so, please silence your phones. A reminder that if you wish to have a joy and sorrow read out, please fill out the form at the back of the sanctuary. Also, you have an announcement you'd like me to read. Please fill that out as well. You'll have to get moving because I'm going to do them very shortly. If you're on Zoom, you can unmute and speak up during the joys and sorrows, or you can put it on chat, something like that, I understand. I see one or two new people here today. I'm not going to ask you to stand up and introduce yourselves, but if you would like to learn more about our congregation and get on the mailing list, please see, who do we see? Becky Tanner? Yes. And following our service, please join us in the community room outside there. We're going to have meet and greet, get to know some of us, and I think there's probably also some cookies and goodies there as well. And you get to make new friends, hopefully. Now, let's say hi to our friends on Zoom. If you turn around and wave at the camera so that they know you're here, and they can watch that later on YouTube. And Tina says that when she works on the video each week, the smiling faces and waves make her smile and happy. Before we begin our service, I will read some announcement here. Karen Horton's memorial service is this coming Saturday, June the 3rd, at 2 p.m. here in the sanctuary. Next Friday, there's a hike coming up. You must be at the church at 8 a.m. to carpool to the Chiricahua National Monument. It's about an 80-minute from Sierra Vista. Join us for a potluck picnic and an optional 1-mile hike to the grotto. See Molly for details, and Molly, there you are, down the front here, to arrange transportation from other towns. Okay, today is the 4th Sunday of the month, so we will take 2 collections. The first one is to support the life of this church and the work it does in our community. The second will be for a shelter in Nogales, Sonora, Mexico. I'm not reading the name because I can't pronounce it. I need some help, probably, somebody.
Casa de la Misericordia de todas las naciones. But you can just say Casa.
I was going to do that. Over the past 3 years, it has housed over 3,000 people fleeing violence and terror in their home countries. And it gives a safe place to individuals, families, mothers, and children seeking asylum. The children at CASA attend a school recognized by the Sonoran government. The professional legal services and psychological support are offered there as well. Sister Lika, a former Catholic nun who grew up beyond the confines of a convent, studying iconography in Russia, traveling through Europe, and now runs the CASA. In 2020, she allowed the architect Ronald Ray to build a horno, a traditional oven made of bricks, in a gathering place outside for people to bake bread and feel at home together. CASA was featured on a PBS special about that oven for the work it does to bring healing from trauma to its residents. Now, the other announcement is the Bisbee Pride Parade. And to see Tina, if you are willing and able to walk with us on Saturday, June the 17th at 10 a.m. And it's a wonderful parade. I went Well, actually, I didn't go in it a few years ago. Sue went in it for me. I would prefer to be on the sidelines watching the festivities and the sights, and it's really worth going to and well worth attending. Are there any, there was another announcement with Roland. The Free Thinkers are meeting here in the committee room at 1 o'clock today. For our chalice lighting, opening words, Within the Heart of a Flower by Reverend Amy Zucker Morgenstein. As we light our flaming chalice, a symbol of Unitarian Universalism and the passion, commitment, love, and life that flickers and dances in this place, let us hear these words from the Reverend Amy Zucker Morgenstern. She serves as parish minister of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Palo Alto, California. Within the heart of the flower, the fountain of beauty. Within the heart of the community, a fire that warms and dances. Within the heart of each of us, a spark of the Spirit of life. Holy, holy, holy. Thank you, Tina. As is our custom here in our congregation, we share our joys and sorrows, and by so doing so, the joys become a little more better, and the sorrows are a little easier to bear. As we celebrate Memorial Day and Flower Communion, we are aware of the power of petals and stalks to represent the love, honor, respect we would like to show those who fell defending our country. And the knowledge we owe ourselves as unique individuals in a loving, larger community. Flowers say more than words alone, so do stones. The stones we put in this bowl today mark our joys and our sorrows and make them touchable, visible, shared more fully in community. And I have a series of joys and sorrows here. I can't read that one. Georgia Brown, my niece's only child, Elizabeth, age 27, was killed in a car crash Friday night. Terrible sorrow.
Thank you, Ginger, for giving this. I've been thinking about this all week, and I was there the day it happened. 2 churches in Douglas, the Episcopal and the Presbyterian, whom I know and do a lot for the community, have been lost to arson. They burned on Monday. I think it was Monday morning.
I'll just add to that it's amazing how quickly law enforcement could find out who did that. And they've been arraigned in Tucson. Very sad.
So as Ken said, the reason the person was apprehended so quickly is the Presbyterian church hadn't quite burned totally. So he came back and tried to torch it again the next day. And Ginger, you said these were beautiful, over 110 years old, with beautiful stained glass. And yeah, and I know both churches have to share their clergy with the same churches in Bisbee. So that, they're yoked, they're struggling. And I don't know if they still do this, but a few years ago, they used to do a progressive dinner to raise money around, so all 4 churches. We believe it's the only place in the country that has 4 different denominations around a square. And they do, so they would do a meal together to raise money, moving from church to church. So it's heartbreaking.
And I just wanted to share a joy and sorrow I had. I went on a hike yesterday. It's the first time I've been hiking for a couple of months. It was less than 5 miles, but it had over 2,000 feet of gain. And our hiking group is normally led by our fearless leader over here, Kurt. He didn't go. My sorrow is that I found muscles that I didn't know I had. My joy is that I was able to get up this morning and move slightly. Tomorrow is Memorial Day. And I don't know if you know this, I'm going to share it with you even if you do. Memorial Day, as previously Decoration Day, as it came to be known, originally honored only those lost while fighting in the Civil War. But during World War I, the United States found itself involved in another major conflict in Europe. And the holiday evolved to commemorate American military personnel who died in all wars, including World War II, the Vietnam War, the Korean War, and the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. We just can't quit having wars, unfortunately. For decades, Memorial Day continued to be observed on May the 30th, the day General Logan had selected for the first Decoration Day. But in 1968, Congress passed the Uniform Monday Holiday Act, which established Memorial Day as the last Monday in May in order to create a 3-day weekend for federal employees. The change went into effect in 1971. The same law also declared Memorial Day a federal holiday. In a time of memorial, I'd like to recognize the veterans that we have in our congregation. Would you please stand up and be recognized? Thank you for your service. I would like to share this poem with you. It was published by Laura Sanders. It's about soldiers bravely giving their lives for our freedom. It was published in November the 9th, 2021 by Family Friends Poems with the concurrence of the author. They sacrificed their lives, entered the gates of hell. Onward they stumbled while all around them fell. War-weary, ragged, faces dirt encrusted black, impatient for the whistle, ready for the attack. In their hearts burned everlasting hope, carrying love letters and handwritten notes, tiny mementos and gifts tucked into pockets, as shells blasted like exploding rockets. They died as all good soldiers die, hoping for a better world for you and I, wanting to set the world free. But many would shudder if they would see the selfish world we live in today. Would they be pleased with its uncaring ways? Because for our today, they gave their tomorrow. So let us be grateful and wallow and not wallow in sorrow. Let us make their sacrifice worthwhile and help each other with willingness and a smile. For at our darkest hour, our country they did save with their lives, which so bravely gave. And I will add further stones to the bowl of water for these brave souls and for the sorrows and joys that remain untold.
When I picked the sermon title, Flower Power, I should have known someone else had. You know, this is about flower communion, and the Reverend Gary Kowalski used it for meditation. He emphasized so many amazing things about flowers that I hadn't realized, and I hope they're accurate. I don't even care if they're true. They're so beautiful. There's a period, of course, in our history on this earth where we had fungi and ferns, but we didn't have flowering plants. And once we had flowering plants, we had seeds, little pockets of nutrition that animals could carry around. He claims that's how we could have mammals who needed more energy to produce more heat. Without flowers, we wouldn't be here. I don't know, but that's... He says, there's so many forces of nature, like glaciers and avalanches, but flowers are also a force. If you've ever lived anywhere there's snow, and you see the crocuses coming up in the spring, through that snow, that's pretty powerful. And he says that's one reason flowers mean so much to human beings. They're this new life despite all odds. But I think flowers mean many things for human beings. A couple days ago, I Googled, first time we know there were flowers at a grave. And shockingly, I found an article from the Smithsonian. The first time they know there were flowers at a grave was a burial that happened between 13,000 to 17,000 years ago in what is part of Israel now. And the reason they know there were plants there is that underneath the bodies, they put a layer of mud, and then they wove flowers for them to lie on top. Maybe it happened before, but it's very hard. Flowers don't fossilize. It's really hard to know, but this is the earliest they found so far. And this was at the end of the Stone Age, as people were settling down and starting agriculture. And so, of course, they waxed out. I don't know if this is true again, but it's beautiful. They think part of the reason they may have done this special burial with the flowers was to make it a festive communal event, to bond them together in this huge time of human transition when we stopped being nomads and started tending gardens. We don't know. I like that story. So we have been going to graves with flowers for a very, very long time. And Decoration Day is really important to my family. My mother's from Massachusetts, and she called it Memorial Day, but she talked about the picnics she had in her youth, starry-eyed, thinking of the old days. Well, we were picnicking in cemeteries together, remembering people. And I can imagine right after the Civil War, people going out to decorate for the dead. It was officially decreed in 1868, May 30th, by the Commander-in-Chief, John A. Logan of the Grand Army of the Republic, to honor Union soldiers who had died. But women had been going out since 1867 and earlier. And again, I don't know which story was the first start, because people spontaneously did this. Oh, there's some Union soldiers. I'm here to decorate some Confederate ones. I think I'll just share. So women gave to both Union and Confederate soldiers and decorated. And I have some inkling about what it must have been like when we think about World War I in Britain, losing a whole generation. Can you imagine how many people were lost in the Civil War? We started to have spiritualist churches after that. They wanted to talk and have seances and connect and say goodbye to these young people lost so early. So I can imagine them going out with flowers to decorate, have picnics, remember. That was really the start of it all. And of course, people still wear poppies, especially in November, on Armistice Day, Veterans Day. I worked in the chapel for NATO in Belgium, and of course, for weeks before and after, the Brits were all wearing their poppies and sharing their poppies. And I lived near Flanders, right, where in the poem written by the Canadian surgeon, Lieutenant Colonel John D. McCrae, in Flanders fields the poppies grow, between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place. It does go on to talk about, take up our quarrel with the foe, that they won't have died in vain. But I think of the poppies also representing that this whole generation, this horrible slaughter. These people are not forgotten. The very last participant the very last veteran of World War I died a few years ago, but they are still not forgotten. We still wear poppies. We still remember them. So for us, I think flowers are a way to say your beauty, your youth, your life, your presence is still here with all of us as we decorate with flowers. When I've told you this story before, when I moved to Russia, I had just been living in Concord, Massachusetts. There's an amazing cemetery there called Sleepy Hollow. And at one point, Sleepy Hollow got permission to move all the graves of their famous authors to Authors Ridge. So they and immediate family are buried together. You don't have to struggle to find Louisa May Alcott and Bronson Alcott, and Ralph Waldo Emerson, and Henry David Thoreau. His little stone says Henry. You don't have to struggle to walk among the greats of Unitarian Universalism. And so I loved walking in that cemetery because the stones are fascinating. The first woman to get her pilot's license in the U.S. is buried there. One man buried between two wives, all different types of stone. I'd love to know what they're doing if there's an afterlife, how they're getting on, right? So I moved to St. Petersburg, Russia. It was Leningrad then. And 900,000 people died in the siege of Leningrad, right? The 90 days. There are at least 2 huge cemeteries, and we would visit one. And coming from Concord, where people are honored one by one, to a place where it'll just say 1943, spring, and 10,000 people will be buried right there. It was so shocking, so horrifying to me. No name for them, no recognition of the individuals, just their huge communal sacrifice. But on May 1st, every year, families come, and there'd be those little Russian schoolgirls with their pigtails and their really pretty bows, carrying flowers, and they'd leave them at this large plot. We don't know exactly where you are in there, but we're remembering you. And for me, that was so powerful because, of course, the most important monument are the people who remember you, who are alive, who say your name, who love you. And for me, it's this interesting bridge. The flower is the bridge, or as Thornton Wilder would say, love is the bridge, between the living and the dead. But who's more beautiful, The ones we're remembering or the ones doing the remembering? It was such a powerful way to use flowers and to say these people who've mattered to us are still alive. When we planned this flower communion, I didn't realize that the 100th anniversary of when Norbert Čapek first did it in Prague is the 4th of June. He did it the 4th of June, 1923. We should be doing it next week. But of course, like all these stories, they may not be entirely true. He did it in Prague. But we'd been doing it. According to hints I've been finding but not being able to verify, that in the 1880s, women, especially in the Midwest, in Unitarian churches, started having flower celebrations that were very similar. When I find out more, I'll let you know if that was true or not. But we don't know the real start of Memorial Day. When was the real Thanksgiving? Oh, don't ask a bunch of New Englanders that. But I grew up near Virginia where they claim they were the first. And we don't really know, but we celebrate the flower communion that Norbert Čapek did in Prague. He had a church of formerly Catholic because he was in the Czech Republic. And he also had some Jewish members. He wanted to have a celebration, but he didn't want it to be similar to the communion they would have had with wine and bread, and he didn't want to remind them of past emotional and religious trauma. He wanted something new and different. What's really interesting is that first hymn we heard today, For the Beauty of the Earth, was written by someone who wanted to use it for communion. Again, I want to celebrate the beauty of creation. And so Chapek went to nature and went to flowers and had people bring in theirs and go home with a different one. The representative that I've been listening to from the Czech Republic, the Reverend Dr. Petr Samoyski, says they try not to be rigid about it. It is the most important celebration of the year for them in the Czech churches, and it was started by Chapek. They try not to venerate him like a saint, and they try not to make it too rigid. One year they had a swing in the back, and people were invited to come in 1920s attire. So they try to make it light and beautiful. He says, the day after, I start planning the next year. Halfway through, they do something called Bringing the Light that I'm going to look into. They do early in December. But he says, oh yeah, Christmas, Easter, it's all about the flower communion for them. But it is a way to say we are part of nature. We are special. We, as individuals, all come in different and yet make this whole. And you go home with a different flower from one you brought in. As you can see, some of these people grew. You can also see that the best deal was dozens of roses that I could find this week in town. But I love seeing all the different flowers people brought. And in a little bit, we will be doing that. When I think about the word communion, in Czechoslovakia, they use just celebration. They call it a slavost, a big celebration. We sometimes use that word communion. And in the UCC, which I sometimes take part in, there are two sacraments, communion and baptism. And a sacrament is a way to make tangible something invisible. And if that's the case, we do a lot of sacraments all the time. When we light candles for people we love, or this flaming chalice to connect us to the larger tradition of Unitarian Universalism, we are making visible that invisible spiritual connection. When my hospice releases butterflies, in some ways I think we see in our midst the people we're missing, but also that invisible love that is so powerfully part of our lives, made tangible in community as we run around resurrecting those very cold, tired butterflies and releasing them to the world together. There's so many ways we make something visible that is invisible, right? All the time. And as I said earlier, flowers have been a very human way to do it forever. When I was getting married, a friend of mine offered to do communion for my wedding. And she said, Tina, I do all my blessings in Hebrew. I'd forgotten that. So all the Jewish friends who were there were amazed because she used all the blessings in Hebrew you do at a Seder meal, because that's really a Seder meal, right? It was a little over the top. It took forever to get through that part of the ceremony, but it was fresh and new. And any time I do a ritual that makes something visible, I have to do it a different way. Another friend of mine described that kind of communion as a gift that Jesus gave his disciples at that Last Supper before he was arrested. He gave them something they could do to remember him far into the future. He would be the host. He would feed them, even if he wasn't there. Now, personally, I don't know if I could be excommunicated for this. I don't care if Jesus lived or was the Son of God. I don't care. I find the stories powerful. And I love that particular view of communion as a way to be gathered in century after century. And so is this flower communion, flower celebration. I don't want to venerate Norbert Chapek. I don't want to put him on a pedestal, but he did start this. And then in 1940, his wife Maya brought it to Cambridge, Massachusetts, and started it either for the first time or again in Unitarianism in this country. During World War II, he was arrested and was in a concentration camp. And again, a story I cannot verify, but it's so beautiful, it's true on some level. He did flower communions in the concentration camps with fellow detainees. Could you imagine? First of all, your worship, you're saying that each person is unique and special and we are diverse, but that you are beautiful. Each person here. Each person in that concentration camp that tried to tell them they were not beautiful, that they were animals, that they were better off dead. He was saying to them, no, you have beauty. You are unique. Gary Kowalski says, one of the things that Chapak was saying, and one of the things flowers say to us in the spring is that they bring us the assurance that warmth and kindness can pierce through frosts of cruelty and indifference, that mercy and decency will blossom, that goodness has deep roots and will prevail. What seems most fragile and perishable is most persistent and enduring. Sisterhood and brotherhood and humanity, justice and charity will ultimately prevail. And usually the flow of my sermons starts, oh, you are lovely, now go do better. I've forgotten who I'm quoting when I say that. It starts personal, and then let's go out in the world and do more. But this time I thought, we do a lot out in the world to remember other people. How often do we remember how beautiful and unique each of us is? I want you to think about that as we take part in our flower communion today. And I'm going to start it all with the translation in English that the Reverend Dr. Petr Samoyski did for his meditation over the flowers. In the name of what is holy, in the name of what is good, in the name of which gives life, we have gathered here in this place today. We have been given life to live under the aspect of eternity. I'd love to ask him, what does that mean? For that is the source of happiness, to work on ourselves and bring happiness into our lives, to be as valid as possible to others with whom we are connected by invisible relationships. You, the flowers, remind us of the wonderful simplicity of the natural order, and that we too are part of it. You remind us of the beauty and harmony of diversity. You remind us that one can feel and perceive and live unity in diversity and diversity in unity. Let the spirit of creative life unite us as it reigns among us. So I'm going to invite people, but if you need me to bring you a flower, raise your hand, and I'll bring you one. All right, and Jean will play us all sorts of flower music. Yes, we are done.
The closing words today are an excerpt from Meditation, Flower Power by Reverend Gary Kowalski. He serves the Unitarian congregation of Taos, New Mexico. Take a moment now to contemplate your flower. Notice it has a center, a focal point from which everything radiates. Ask yourself where your own center lies. Flowers stretch up toward the giving sun. Ask yourself, toward what lofty aim does your own soul aspire? Flowers have roots hugging the earth. Ask yourself, where do you draw your own strength and nourishment? As we go forth this day, may we grow in beauty, in light, in cheer and joy, and share our gifts as freely as these pleasant flowers bloom.